What is going on, everyone? I'm Marcus Lapp with the Indie Music Lab, and welcome to Essential Music Theory for Producers. In this video, I'm going to show you the basic fundamentals of music theory, which will help you write better and more interesting songs. Let's go. Alright, let's dive in. If you want to follow along with a worksheet of sorts, I did make one. It's in the description below. It's the first thing you'll see. You can download that and follow along, which that will be especially helpful if you need to go back and see visuals of chords and the different things that we're going to talk about. I highly recommend that you download that and print that out and follow along with that. So without further ado, let's jump right in. First off, in order to have an understanding of basic music theory, you need to understand the subcomponents that make music theory possible. There's a lot of rhyme and reason to all of this because most of it is just math. So what exactly is a note? Musical notes are tones that have a specific vibration frequency, and it's the variation in the vibration frequency that determine whether a pitch is lower or higher. Basically, the slower the vibration, the lower the pitch, the faster the vibration, the higher the pitch. For example, this is what happens when you tune a guitar. When you turn that knob and you tighten the string, the pitch goes up because the vibration frequency goes faster because of the tightening of the string, versus if you loosen the string, the pitch goes down. Now, if you play middle C on the piano, which is this note, that note vibrates at 262 Hertz per second. This is an important point because of what we're going to look at next: octaves. Remember what I said at the onset of this video, that music theory is basically just math? Let me explain octaves. Okay, so on a piano keyboard, there aren't 88 notes, they're not 61 notes, they're not 48 notes. There's only 12 notes on the entire piano keyboard. That's right, only 12. Now, before you type a bunch of mean comments that will make me lose sleep tonight, let me explain what I'm talking about. There are only 12 notes because if you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, those notes duplicate and repeat over and over, just higher or lower. So yes, there are only 12 notes, but what happens is those 12 notes repeat in higher octaves and lower octaves, in higher octaves and lower octaves, stretched out across the entire note spectrum, no matter what instrument you're playing. Because if you've ever looked at the notes on a piano, it's, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and it starts over A, B, C, D, E, F, G, starts over again, and so on and so forth. Now, there's a mathematical reason why this note, which is C3, sounds the same as this note, which is C4. It's actually really cool. So if this note right here, which is C3, vibrates at 131 Hertz per second, this C right here, which is one octave up, this is C4, vibrates at 262 Hertz per second. 131 times 2 equals 262. You're welcome. Your ear is so well designed and so advanced that it can literally detect this note as sounding essentially the same as this note, only because it vibrates at exactly twice the speed. Okay, so here is a visual of all the octaves spread out across the keyboard. Now that you understand what an octave is and that there are only 12 notes, we can now move on to the next topic, the major scale. The major scale is simply a pattern of 7 notes that follows a precise pattern. But first, in order to understand the pattern, you need to understand half steps and whole steps. A half step is a certain distance or interval between two notes. So if I asked you to start here and go a half step up in pitch, that note would just be the very next note higher. That would be this note. So these two notes are a half step apart. Now what about if I start here and I say go up a half step from here, just the very next note higher, boom, these two notes are a half step apart. It's just the very next note higher. Now if I was, let's say, here and I want to go a half step lower, then I would go to the very next note lower. Doesn't matter if it's black or white key, just the next note, and it's this. So these two notes are a half step apart. A whole step is simply the equivalent of 2 half steps. So if you're on guitar and you slide up 2 frets, that's a whole step interval. Same goes for keys. If I start on the C again, remember I said a half step was the next note, so we're doing 2 half steps that equal a whole step. So if you go up a whole step, it would be boom, boom. These two notes are a whole step apart. Same thing. If I started here and I said I'm gonna go a whole step up in pitch from here, 2 half steps would be boom, boom. These 2 notes are a whole step apart. Now, trick question. If I asked you to start here and go down a whole step, which equals 2 half steps, what would you do? Would you go boom, boom? Wrong. You would go boom, boom. You just go 2 half steps down, and just like that. These are a whole step apart. So it doesn't matter what it looks like. This looks different than this, looks different than this. But they're all a whole step apart. And that is what matters.
Yeah, that's all fine and good, brother, but what about black and white keys?
Okay, so let's talk about black and white keys for a second before we move on, because it's really important. It's very basic, but it's really important that you understand the role that black and white keys play. You have to understand that black and white keys are not notes per se. Black and white keys are the layout of a particular instrument, the piano. Guitar does not have black and white keys on them. The piano is laid out this way with black keys and white keys, not because they had to, but because it worked best to make that instrument sound the best, to make it more playable so that the player could be more efficient and proficient as they play this particular instrument. There is no difference between black keys and white keys. They're all notes that are a half step apart from the note next to it. You just go up like... Does that sound like... Do the black notes sound any different than the white notes when I do that? No, they all sound like notes that are just a half step apart, just climbing up, boop, 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 boop. Again, I need you to move on, okay? Take a breath, let's move on, forget about black and white keys, know that that's just a layout for a particular instrument. The major scale is the scale that you hear in almost every pop song, in almost every modern rock song, and in every nursery rhyme. It's the single most used scale in modern music, and it's not close. So the major scale follows this exact pattern. Whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. Start on a random note and play 2 whole steps, a half step, 3 whole steps and a half step. That is the major scale. So for example, if we start on the C right here and we were to make a major scale, we would go whole step, so whole step, and then half step, 3 whole steps after that, so whole step, whole step, and then a half step to go to the next octave. So it's whole step, half step, whole step, half step. Think of it as 2, 1, 3, 1. 2 whole steps, 1 half step, 3 whole steps, 1 half step. This is the pattern. This is it. So this is why I was saying it doesn't matter if it's black keys or white keys, because the pattern is what matters. So if I start on a black note, if I start here on this B flat, and I go, and I use that exact same pattern, and I go whole step, half step, whole step, half step, that is, which sounds kind of like, right? It's the pattern that matters, not where you start. Now remember what I said earlier, that there are only 12 notes on the piano? Well, there are actually only 12 notes, period. Because there are 12 notes, there are 12 potential keys. Because as soon as you get to 12 notes, the alphabet resets. So it's, A sharp, B, C, C sharp, D, D sharp, E, F sharp, G, G sharp starts over at A again and repeats, and it's cyclical like that. So there's no J, K, L, M, N, O, Ps on the keyboard, but we already covered that when we talked about octaves. So let's move on. Because there are only 12 notes, there are only 12 potential keys that your song could be in. The key of a song simply means this: what note is the song based on? Or another way of putting it is, what scale is the song based on? So if you start on the F note and you build a major scale using the 2, 1, 3, 1 whole step, half step pattern that we just talked about, now if you play Mary Had a Little Lamb within that scale, now what happens if we just change the key? Let's say we were to start in A or something. So, and we were to go. You get the point. This both of those are in a completely different key, but the melody still sounds exactly the same. Your brain recognizes immediately, oh, this is Mary Had a Little Lamb. By the way, this is why when your annoying aunt starts singing Happy Birthday way too high, it still sounds like Happy Birthday, Well, other than the fact that you all sound like dying cats. The key of the song is the first note of the scale that the song is based on. That note is called the root. So like I was playing earlier, Mary Had a Little Lamb, if we're in F again, in F major, the melody doesn't start on the F note, but it's still based on the F scale. And this is something that you'll learn as you get to understand melodies and structures more, the more that you learn these things. So let's continue on to the next phase. Okay, now that you know what the major scale is and you know the intervals and the half steps and the whole steps that make up a major scale, it's now time to talk about chords. Your ability to understand chords is going to be so easy if you understand the major scale, because we're not choosing random notes to make these chords. We're only using the 7 notes of the scale. So there are 2 basic kinds of chords. We have major chords and minor chords. So let's start with major chords. So to build a major chord, this is the pattern. Start on any note. We'll start on F, and you go up 4 half steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 3 half steps, 1, 2, 3, and go like that. That's the F major chord. Let's start on a different note. Let's go B flat, and again 4 half steps, and then 3 half steps. That's a B flat major chord. Now the pattern for a minor chord is very similar. You just, instead of 4 and 3, it's 3 and 4. So if you start on F, you go 3 half steps, and then 4 half steps. So this is an F minor. Same with B flat. If we start here, we go 3 half steps, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is a B flat minor chord. Notice here that there's only a 1 note difference between a B flat major and a B flat minor. So this is a B flat major, and this is a B flat minor. Now there are only 6 essential chords in every given key, 3 major and 3 minor. And they're really easy to find. All you need to do is know the 7 notes of the scale that you're in, and then you build the chords using only the 7 notes of that scale. So here are the 6 chords in the key of C. Now again, we're only using the 7 notes in the key of C. What are the 7 notes in the key of C, you might ask? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's the all white key. They're all white notes, which makes it really easy. So we're only going to use these 7 notes to make up all 6 of these chords. So all you need to do, this is exactly what it looks like. This is a C major. This ends up being a D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor. 6 chords right there. They all fit within these 7 notes. All of this is facilitated by your knowledge of the 7 notes of the major scale and how that you only need those 7 notes to come up with the 6 essential chords that make up that scale. Again, there's a rhyme and a reason to all of this. It's all math, and it'll really start to make sense the more that you practice and implement and start to get a grip and a handle on what these fundamental music theory basics are. Chord inversions are very simple. So we already know that there are multiple octaves in music, which means that there isn't just one F sharp note. There's multiple F sharp notes. Here's an F sharp, here's an F sharp, here's an F sharp, here's an F sharp, and so on and so forth. Basically, a chord inversion simply means this. If we start out with a basic C chord, C, E, and G, if you simply rearrange the order and still only use notes C, E, and G, but in a different order, it'll look like this. So now, instead of the C being here, the C is on top, and we have E, G. Or this. C, E, and the G, you could say the G is on the bottom instead of on the top. So you're still using the same 3 notes to make up that chord, you're just changing the order. So instead of just C, E, and G, like we started, you now have C, E, and G, or C, E, and G. You get the point. Using chord inversions is a key component of getting out of the beginner phase of making music. Because if you only use chords in their basic root form, or what's called root position, which is this, you'll start to sound monotonous and you'll be jumping around from chord to chord instead of moving seamlessly between chords. And what that looks like is, if I stay in root position the entire time without using any inversions, it'll look like this. It just jumps from here, like this. But if you use inversions, it can look something like this. So by using inversions, you're not going to jump around as much, and you'll be able to create more interesting chord progressions that flow better, that have a seamless transition between chords, and it's just a better way to get a more diverse and interesting sound. And last but not least, before we wrap this whole thing up, let's talk about the Nashville number system. The Nashville number system is such a valuable tool, and your knowledge of it will just make you an infinitely better producer and musician, and it'll help you understand the structure of music better. So this is how the number system works. So remember the 6 chords that I just talked about earlier? You know how there's 6 chords in every key, 6 essential chords in every key? Well, now we're doing the exact same thing, except now we're actually giving each one of these chords a specific number. So again, if we're in the key of C here, the 6 chords were C major, D minor, E minor, F major, G major, A minor. But instead of using that terminology, what the Nashville number system says is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. That's what I'm talking about. So instead of saying play a C, F, G chord progression, we're going to say play a 1, 4, 5 chord progression. What the number system facilitates is just your ability to understand the structure of chords no matter the key that you're in. Knowing the number system is vital to being able to change keys quickly, because even though your starting point is different, the numbers stay the same. That's why the number system is so powerful. So if I say again, I want a 1, 4, 5 chord progression, if in C it's, but what about if I'm in the key of E and I do 1, 4, 5? Sounds the same, right? What the number system also helps you understand is why certain chords in certain contexts sound the way that they do. So if you take an F major chord, for example, just an F major chord as a standalone chord with no context, it sounds like a regular, boring major chord, and that's it. Like, it doesn't elicit any kind of emotional response from you when I play this. But if we're playing in the key of C, and we play an F major chord in that context, so if we're doing, then it takes on a whole new vibe and a whole new emotion because it's played in context. And that context, that F chord, was the 4 chord. So now this helps you understand, okay, the 4 chord sounds this way, not an F major chord sounds this way. Because an F major chord sounds like an F major chord, and it sounds completely different depending on the context of the key that you're in. So that's why the number system is so powerful, because it'll help you understand the pattern, the vibe of like a 2 chord versus a 4 chord versus a 6 chord versus a 3 chord. Because the numbers are what stay the same no matter which key that you're in. Okay, now to wrap all of this up and to put a bow on this, we're gonna start from scratch essentially, but do it very quickly and just build this up just so you can compact everything you just learned into one exercise. So we'll start out by going after an F major scale. So we'll start to build the F major scale. And how do we do that? 2, 1, 3, 1. Remember, 2 whole steps, a half step, 3 whole steps, and a half step. So we'll start on F. So we go whole step, half step, whole step, whole step, whole step, half step. So we've got that. Got the F major scale. Now, the 6 chords in the F major scale, using only those notes, would be the 1 chord, which is F major, the 2 chord, which is G minor, the 3 chord, which is A minor, the 4 chord, which is B flat major, the 5 chord, which is C major, and the 6 chord, which is D minor. Now let's play a 1, 4, 6, 5 chord progression in F major. And again, I used some inversions there. I didn't go where it just jumps around from one spot to the next. Instead, I went. Okay, so before I go, I did forget one little thing, and that is just which chords are major and which chords are minor in these 6 chords, these 6 essential chords, especially in the context of the Nashville number system. So again, remember, in the key of C, we have 6 chords. But what I want you to remember now is the 1, 4, and 5 are the major chords, and the 2, 3, and 6 are the minor chords. So in C, the 1 is major, the 2 is minor, 3 is minor, 4 is major, 5 is major, 6 is minor. 1, 4, 5 major, 2, 3, 6. 2, 3, 6 minor. All right, we are done. Thank you so much for watching. I just want to encourage you to go back through this content, rewatch this video as many times as you need, just to make sure that you've digested the information, that you know it, that you can apply it, and just go back, print the PDF that I mentioned. It's in the description. First thing you'll see in the description. That should help you out as well, just so you can quickly reference it. So yeah, I really hope this was helpful. Please do let me know if it was, and if it wasn't, or you just feel like I breezed over some stuff or I missed something, let me know in the comments or shoot me an email, and I would love to help you out as much as I can to get you started and get this knowledge in your brain so that you can make better music faster. Thank you so much for learning and watching with me. I really appreciate your time, and I hope you have an incredible rest of your day. See ya.